Good morning, brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining us here today to pay respects to John J Semenoff and to support his family. My name is Donna, daughter of John. I will be guiding today's service with the assistance from others. Братья и сестры, мы собрались сегодня прощаться с нашим духовным братом, с Иваном Ивановичем Семеновым. Он был призван домой в Царствие Небесное. Brothers and sisters, we've gathered here today to bid farewell to our spiritual brother, John J Semenoff. He's been called home to the eternal spiritual kingdom. We wanted to let you know, since everyone knows English, we will announce things mainly in English, but we will also have Russian singing and speaking, and also French to represent the family. But we will do our best to communicate everything from the heart and soul. We would like to take a moment to hold in our hearts the people who feel love and loss but could not make it to the funeral. In particular, Dad's brother Peter and partner Irene, Dad's sister Hazel, and husband Ed Purcell, Dad's sister Lillian, and husband Paul Boykin, and grandchildren Maria and Pablo. Let us send them love and comfort. The family is going to say some prayers. We'd like to ask everyone to please stand.
Дом наш благодатный, давание Божье, держишь Христос, правитель Дух Святой, пути я с нами Бог, Богу нашему святому. Господи, благослови. Life is full of decisions, big and small. Let us make the ones that are best for all, for ourselves and our children, for our families, the world. Let us widen our heart space deep within, where the choice of love is always available for ourselves and our children, for our families and the world. When we practice our loving every day, strong love will become our natural way for ourselves and our children, for our families and the world. Благослови. Тишину, Господи, тишину. Меня, Господи, дари там царство. Меня, Господи, меня, Господи, память память тишину. Дай мне, Господи, все знать, все дари. Справедливо. Thank you.
Господи, благослови. Отечество небесное, мелкое сверхности ясного земля. Оттуда все начало поднявши, всем спаси Тоша, всем родившим, всем божественным. Есть нам земля Отечества, но есть странника на земле. Рождение наше на небеси, тело наше земное. Не есть человек, душа в теле, ум небесный, божественный, род Божий есть мы. Тело, если создано на земле, душа висит и произошла. Тело наше обратится в прав, а душа возвратится в Отечество свое. И нет ни смерти, ни беды, ни вины, ни плача, ни глады, ни жажды, ни темности. Там вечный день и бесстрастный свет, там живут ангелы, архангелы, вся небесная сила. А никто не может отвериться в едином свете Божьего Богу нашему.
Господи, благослови. Благодарю и славу Тебя, Господи, и доставил меня спокойно. Прошу Твоей милости и Тебе, похорони праведную Отцу, направляй мою жизнь, чтоб жизнь моя соответствовала Твоему волю, Господи, и не шла вразрез путями мирских Богу. Богу нашему славу.
Отче наш,
святится имя Твое, да придет царствие Твое, да будет воля Твоя, яко на небе, так и на земле. Хлеб наш насущный, дай нам на сей день, и прости нам грехи наши, и мы будем прощать обижающих нас. Не допусти нас, Господи, до искушения, приведи нас, Господи, во спасение. Я уверяю, сила и воля, Богу нашему славу. Будь всякому на Тебе, Господи, благо, и даешь нам пищу, благо, отвечаешь Духу Своему, исполняешь всякое пришедшее благоволение. Помяни, Господи, всякое пришедшее вечной жизни, а нас сохрани, Господи, во всем благополучии. Свете нас и поклоняйся Иисусу Христу. Христос воскрес!
Воистину Христос воскрес! По-твоему, вечное омовение в Царстве Небесном.
Теперь нам по-французски.
Que ton nom soit sanctifié, que ton règne vienne, que ta volonté soit faite sur la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain de ce jour, mais pardonne-nous nos offenses, mais ne nous soumets pas au mal. Mais délivre-nous du mal. Amen.
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Brassimo. It's an honor for me to help the family out today. I'm not working, not most of them. Okay. So we're going to do the traditional part of the Lugar ceremony or service. Thanks. A brief explanation of the traditional Lugar funeral. We come together to mark a moment in the journey of a soul, the transition from the earthly physical existence to the spiritual eternal life. All the religions and religious societies of our times have developed their own ways of accomplishing this according to their core beliefs, some services being a lot more elaborate than others. As simplicity is an important aspect of the Dugar faith and way of life, it is also reflected in our cultural traditions. A traditional Dugar funeral is basically a prayer meeting called a millennia in Russian, where the deceased families, friends, and community members gather to comfort the grieving loved ones, to bid our final farewell, and using the spiritual language of our souls, we ask for forgiveness for any real or perceived slight or misunderstanding we may have had with this person, and to pray for the acceptance of their soul into God's heavenly kingdom. So as part of our tradition, we sing 3 psalms and a hymn to start this part of our tradition. The reason we do 3 is they symbolically represent the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So our first song. Кого избрал Христос для воплощения Своего. A Dukhobor, or spirit wrestler, is one who becomes aware of the divine presence, the Christ consciousness within themselves.
Божество обитает на земле Господа, из которого выражается бесконечная мудрость. Иисусу Христу нужно было иметь плоть и быть человеком, ибо устами человеческими глаголит Господь. Церковь апостольская на Синоне есть очевидный Бог. Посреди горы чувствует блаженственной мудрости. Сила Бога в человеке, обитающий в мир, источник воды живой, благоденствует о вечной жизни. Их добродетель, оружие жизни, восторжествует над миром или земным царством, которому конец приближается. Тогда духоводцы станут известны всему человечеству, и Христос один будет достойным. Вокруг его соберутся все люди, только в этом славе будет предшествовать время Господа. Борьба будет ужасна, но правда одержит победу, и вытворится Царствие Божье над миром.
Yeah.
We just wanted to say if anyone is moved to quietly, if they want, they can come up to the casket if they want to say a silent prayer or needing a hug, they can come up.
Our next song, Dom Nuestro Hadalai. Our haven of refuge that giveth us blessings is our trust in God. In this sacred trust, Christ himself dwelleth, and his Holy Spirit is ever on guard. In all our undertakings, may God be with us. Walk on our shoulders, Lord.
Господи, благослови. Бог наш благодатный, желание Божие и верующего Христова, покровитель Дух Святой, прибудет, да с нами Бог, Бог нашим.
Sabu Simansky. We have an English translation. Please.
Lord, give us thy blessing. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he stood there alone, sorely burdened with life and death struggle. To the all-gracious Father, in unbearable longing, prayed the patient and long-suffering Son. If possible, dear Father, let this cup pass me by, but then in all things let thy will be done. And he turned to the apostle with thoughts that were troubled. But heavy with slumber, the apostle slept beneath the olives, and softly he said to them, Were you really not able to labor with me even one single hour? Commence ye to pray, for your bodies are weak. And so he again went to pray by himself. If thus it should be that it can't pass me by, this cup just could not be avoided. Then let it be so, be it done as you wish, my dear Father. And again deadly fear kept encompassing him, his sweat dripped like blood upon Mother Earth as he waited in immeasurable anguish. And so once again to the apostles he went, but all the apostles were deeply in slumber. And all the same words to his Father he said. He fell on his face and he wept and he prayed, dismayed in the struggle so trying. Oh, if only I could pray in Gethsemane's garden and see the footprints made by those godly feet and weep there with tears hot and burning. If I could but kneel down upon that cool sand and there kiss the earth so divine, where ever so lonely love suffered so much, where sweat from his brow kept dripping like blood, where fate's bitter cup he awaited. Oh, if only that night and any mortal on that terrible night of redemption to the tired, weary breast of the martyr would have given but one word of compassion. But all remained calm through the dark of the night. The apostles slept on in their sleep so oppressive, oblivious to impending disaster, and to Gethsemane's garden with club and with sword, influenced by Judas and in hiding and stealth, came people in hordes that were countless. Our God be praised.
Oh
I should have read this a little bit before this, but it still applies. We come together as brothers and sisters to pray, to unite into one community, one living whole. We come together to sing, and the sound of our voices lifts our spirits and opens our hearts. Every time we meet, we bless one another. Every time we meet, we create sacred space. Today, one precious soul has left us. It has left life on earth behind. Let us sing for this soul, brothers and sisters. Let us surround this soul with singing as it returns home to its source, the divine. The divine will say to it, beautiful soul, living whole, while you lived, you did your best to honor the truth and follow wise teachings. Now, come home to me. Come home to the light that was always inside you. I am so glad to see you, to welcome you back to myself. Your life on earth was a beacon of light, an example for others to follow. To conclude this part of our tradition before we get to reading of the biography, people will speak, will sing a hymn. Отец тобой утешаюсь, Lord, to thee I turn for comfort.
Amen.
comfort, I wish to ever be at peace. I learn on thee, my faithful pillar, when evil forces threaten me. Away with disbelief, dejection, I fully give myself to thee. Although around me suffering threatens, you're always there with loving care. And when there's a bitter disappointments, my Lord, you never leave my side. To thee my prayers are all directed, my helpless soul turns ever to thee. At times the pathway is so misty, the darkness gives my mind some doubt. To thee I turn with fervent prayer, with faith that I shall see the light. So I'll keep going through its misty, with trust that you will lead me on. With you on my paths are free of danger, you'll always be my guiding light. J Semenoff, John J Semenoff, was born in Lundbrook, Alberta on March 19, 1936. To John J. and Helen Semenoff. Soon after, he was joined by his brothers George and Peter. All his life, John savored the early childhood memories of his mother's beautiful voice singing Doukhobor songs while she worked. In the early 1940s, the family followed a better growing season to Grand Forks, BC, where they engaged in seed farming. Here, John was joined by sisters Hazel and Lillian. As a boy, John used to dream that he was in an apple box, trying to peer over the edges. This desire to see beyond boundaries went on to characterize the rest of his life. As a boy, he joined his brothers and friends in exploring all of the neighboring mountains. As a teenager, he traveled to the Okanagan to pick fruit, to Alberta to help his orphaned cousin's farm, and together with his brother George on an impromptu trip to New Westminster to visit his grandfather. Later, John even became a Doukhobor storyteller at Expo 86. In the 1950s and 1960s, John was very much involved in the Doukhobor youth movement. He taught Russian school and led the Union of Youth. He also helped organize youth choir trips to Alberta and Saskatchewan, where Doukhobor youth could meet one another. In the early 1960s, on such a trip, John met the love of his life, Elizabeth. He fell head over heels for her smile. John went on to organize the Suffield Manifestation for Peace in Alberta. The Canadian Suffield military base was home to chemical and biological weapon development and testing. John was proud of the success of the manifestation and especially proud that he was able to secure the cooperation and help of the base administration and police to ensure that the protest was able to proceed in a safe manner. Later, John led USCC committees for peace and multiculturalism. As John proudly proclaimed, he was DDSC, determinedly dedicated to social change. John and Elizabeth were married in 1964, and they had 3 children, of which they were all very proud. Donna, Lisa, and John. During their children's upbringing, John and Elizabeth were very involved in USCC Doukhobor life. They joined choirs, went to ADL meetings, taught Sunday meetings, and led seminars, joined the USCC Executive Committee, and much more. As the children got older, John enjoyed discussing the broad range of ideas. Then came along 8 grandchildren: Maria, Pablo, Maya, Angelica, Forrest, Sasha, Nini, Emmanuel, and Minik, who brought great joy. John traveled several times to Ontario, Quebec to visit and to help out where needed. A special note is the year that came with cataract vision challenges and the beginnings of a hernia to help Lisa and her husband Bruce build their house from scratch. When Dad wasn't helping, he was telling his family stories of his life. To support his family, John worked at a variety of jobs, from carpenter to fraternal insurance salesman to photographer. His real passion, however, was community organization, from the peace movement to multiculturalism to the environmental movement. Wherever he felt that it was important that something be done, he was also an ardent supporter of the local arts and restorative justice. John believed in empowerment, in the bringing of people together, and the building of bridges across various groups. He also loved to tell jokes and share smiles. He would tell people that he retired to become a farmer of laughs. John will be fondly remembered by many as a kind, gentle, cheerful, loving, philosophical soul. John was predeceased by his parents, John and Helen Semenoff, and his sister-in-law Irene. He's survived by his wife Elizabeth, his children Donna, Lisa, and John, his grandchildren Forrest, Maria, Pablo, Angelica, Emmanuel, Maya, Sashanini, and Medic. Also by his brother George, wife Irene and family, his brother Pete, companion Irene Klukov and family, his sister Hazel and husband Ed Purcell and family, and his sister Lillian, husband Paul Voikin and family. His brother Peter Semenoff and companion Irene Klukov and his sister Lil Voikin and Paul Voikin and Ed and Hazel Purcell were unable to make it, but they wanted to share the following memories of John with you. Although we are not physically with you, please know you are in our hearts and our thoughts. In reminiscing about Brother John, things that came to mind include growing up in a large happy family, gardening together, and going swimming in the river. Lil's first memory of her older, by 19 years, brother is him coming home from working out of town and her hiding her mother's skirts from him. Being the oldest sibling, John had the most knowledge of carpentry, and together the brothers renovated the family home. Her mother was especially proud of her kitchen cupboards, designed and built by her 3 sons, with John in charge of the project. John's response to his 2 younger sisters pestering about his girlfriend's name, he claimed it was Petunia. Many large family dinners, and John, as the family photographer, wanting to get the photos just right. When Paul wanted to phone Lil to ask her out on their first date, and he chose the wrong John Semenoff in the phone book. Her brother was very protective and wanted to know why he was calling and who he was, who his parents were, etc., before he gave him the correct phone number for his younger sister. Peter and his family visited John and his family in Penticton and enjoying the Peach Festival together. John's thirst for knowledge, avid reading, and his desire to share what he had learned. We remember him adopting the internet for information and communication long before it was commonly used. John's pride in his family. John Bechley, Pamit Sasvegibesne, and we will gather to honor and remember John here on Saturday at the same time as his service at home, sending our love. Paul Lil Voikin, Ed and Hazel Purcell, Peter Semenoff, and Irene Lukov.
Now the family, with the help of everybody, will sing Slava. So that was a hymn that says, praise, praise, praise God. I wanted to thank God and thank Dad for all the wonderful conversations we had together, and the growing we did from the conversations, and to thank Dad for his support and his courage and supporting our creativity. I wanted to sing a psalm that I created in English. Господи, благослови. Life is full of decisions, big and small. Let us make the ones that are best for all. Let us make the ones that are best for all, for ourselves and our children, for our families and the world, for ourselves and our children, for our families and the world. Let us widen our heart space, deep within, for the choice of love is always a win. For the choice of love is always a win. For ourselves and our children, for our families and the world, for ourselves and our children, for our families and the world. When we practice our loving every day, strong love will become our natural way. Strong love will become our natural way, for ourselves and our children, for our families and the world, for ourselves and our children, for our families and the world. The family is going to sing Нам жизнь дана, чтобы любить. We live our life for loving. Нам жизнь дана, чтобы любить. Любить без меры, без предела, и всем страдальцам посвятить. We'd like to please ask Vera Canigan to come up and share with us.
Well, it's a real honor for me to share some thoughts. It's very touching. Such beautiful singing. I think your dad is smiling wherever he is in heaven. And Elizabeth and John have raised a wonderful family, and God bless all of you. Last Sunday, I received a phone call from my friend Elizabeth, who wished Walter and I a happy anniversary, our 55th. I thanked her for the warm wishes and asked her when hers and John's anniversary was, recalling that their wedding was just shortly after ours. She said that they had celebrated their last 54th anniversary in August of this year. Curious as to why this was their last, she replied that John had passed away quite suddenly on Saturday. That was the day before. These were very sad and unexpected news to us, and of course I expressed our sincere condolences. As probably everyone here is aware, I grew up in Grand Forks. During the late 50s and early 60s, was very involved with our USCC Union of Youth with Sion Local at that time. Since I started working at the office above the Co-op building in 1958, many young people visited the office for scheduled meetings. That era of our Doukhobor history was often referred to as our golden years of youth. John was especially involved with belonging to the Union of Youth Council and participated in many committees, as was mentioned. Jim Popoff reminded me that in 1962 and 63, John was involved in a very special committee whose task it was to improve the functioning of the Union of Youth. Although my memory is quite hazy on the details, we gathered at one of our small halls in the Chistikova community. We had a lot of little halls that we used at that time. And also around that time, since there were many girls participated in youth activities, we formed a Grand Forks Girls Choir. When our BC youth received an invitation from the youth in Saskatoon to participate with the choral program at their variety night, Our girls' choir invited the young men from Grand Forks, and we also invited young men from the Kootenays to join the bus that traveled from Grand Forks, stopping in Preston, Lundbreck, Pincher Creek, making its way to Saskatoon. John also participated with the group and noticed a young woman with a very friendly smile when we stopped for lunch in Lundbreck. Little did we know that was the start of John and Elizabeth's courtship and life together. Elizabeth joined our group in Pincher Creek and continued to Saskatoon. And that's all to do with the memory, hopefully that the memory serves us right. That was how John introduced us to Elizabeth Semenoff, who lived there with her family. They continued seeing each other, and in August of the same year, they took part in the 10th Western Citizenship Seminars, sponsored by the Canadian Council of Christians and Jews, which was held in Nelson from August 26th to the 31st at the Notre Dame University. Walter and I also participated, and we all found the seminar not only educational, but truly enjoyable, heartwarming, and rewarding. We made friends, we shared opinions, and learned lessons on tolerance. Walter recalls that when the seminar was over, we all went to a restaurant across the bridge and enjoyed the scenery and beautiful lights. Walter and I were married in November of that year, and John and Elizabeth's wedding was in August of the following year. All of us who know John were aware of his keen knowledge and understanding of many different topics, because, as we've all heard, he's well read. And his use of unique terms was quite extensive. His talents and creative energies made their way into the peace movement, and he was a key member of the organizing committee at the Suffield Peace Manifestation held in Alberta, July 5th, 1964. At that time, A.J. Musty, the featured speaker at this amazing event, brought to our attention the use of the term manifestation instead of demonstration, because what is manifested is something which comes from within, which bubbles up from within rather than something that is thrown at you, so to speak. There is no doubt in my mind that John consciously selected the word manifestation. The whole event was very well organized thanks to John's efforts. I remember it was raining, and we stood there with our umbrellas, and for half an hour the speeches would be going on, and half an hour it was silence. So people also had a chance to think about what is said and to hear their spiritual voice within. Through the years, we've been friends, being school trustees with Elizabeth, and I recall John taking a photo of me and Walter when I first became a trustee. He says, "You have to have that photograph," so I still have that photograph. We even traveled to Toronto, a national trustee convention, and went on a tour of Niagara Falls. Our children were close in age, and we attended Bruce and Lisa's wedding in Grand Forks, which we are very happy to have had that experience. Later, Elizabeth and I coordinated activities for the Youth Council, helped organize events and festivals. I also recall John's unique style and his special tie style. He had a special tie style. His preparedness for any type of weather, and of course for 10 years we often traveled by bus to Vancouver to participate in End the Arms Peace Walk and take pictures. I also admired their gentle and conscientious interaction with each other, with their children and grandchildren, and the true expression of each other's gifts. Walter and John were both knowledgeable in developing photographs and contributed to Iskra photos of the various events. The Suez Peace Walk was another one of John's favorite manifestations that he earnestly helped organize, which continues to the present time. John continues to participate with the Voluntary Peace Group whenever a meeting is held in Grand Forest. When I mentioned to my friends, some of them shared a few pieces of information. Eileen Boykin shared how he and Leonard used to work on the dam in Revelstoke, and if John was late in coming, Leonard would say, "If you came earlier, John, we would be able to get Revelstoke sooner, and then you could sleep longer in the morning." And John always said, "But I sleep fast." So, it was cute. You may also recall the column that John wrote in Easter, and I didn't have a chance to go and get the 1975 Easter, but he intuitively called it Oczek Ostra Glazo, which means keen sharp or keen eye. So if ever somebody has the Easters from 1975, perhaps you can find it. Eventually, life took us in different directions, with families growing up and moving away, grandchildren coming and requiring attention. But always, I truly appreciate the friendship and experiences that we shared, which greatly enriched our lives, at times making us think out of the box. Just like you mentioned, the apple box. We do have to once in a while think out of the box, and it's a beautiful picture right now to see so many young people present here, and it's an expression of, if you reach a little bit farther, then we will gather our younger people together. May John rest in peace in God's heavenly kingdom. For Elizabeth and all of your wonderful family, may God grant you strength and courage to bear your loss. God bless you all. Thank you.
Speaker Arle, sleep on, you brave, striving eagles.
express gratitude to our ancestors who were brave and stood for love and peace. And I wanted to say thank you, Dad, for being brave and standing for love and peace. Ask Forrest to come join me in singing a song that he and I learned in choir, but we sing it with different parts together now. This is a song that we sang a few times for Dad at night, and he seemed to find peace in it. We'd like to ask if there's anyone else who wants to share anything. And if there is someone right now, or we can give you a chance to think.
Liz, family, my name is Noria Tequila, and I've known you guys for a long time. There was never a time that John would go by without saying something or talking about something or a joke or anything. He's going to be missed dearly. And here is a poem I'd like to read. It's called The Family Chain. When you lived that morning, God would call your name. In life, we loved you dearly. In death, we do the same. It hurt a lot to lose you. You never went alone. Part of us went with you the day God called you home. You left us precious memories. Your love is still a guide. And though we cannot see you, you're always by our side. The family chain is broken and nothing is the same. And as God calls us one by one, the chain will link again. Liz, family, take care of yourselves and each other. John, rest in peace. And by the way, you guys are doing a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Okay. We're going to invite Donald Vernon to come and speak as well.
John is the first Duke Board I met in Red Books. And it is an event for me because after 40 years now, I've come to the USCC a number of times, and if it wouldn't be for John, it might have bypassed me. And it would have been a great loss. And John and I, our connection basically comes around uranium mining. We got involved in the mid-'80s on trying to have a permanent moratorium on uranium mining, which we didn't get, but we got a 7-year one or another one. And it was always very interesting with John, because we met in the 80s, but I didn't get a telephone till about 1990. And at that moment, our conversation started. So I've spent hundreds of hours on the telephone with J Semenoff. And I can't believe how, whenever you entered a discussion, nothing was left in the air. Everything had to be anecdoted, commented about by some biblical saying, somebody else's saying. It was ongoing. And after all these years, you get to understand that this guy's a big-time storyteller. And so I had the benefit of a lot of that. And it's like the time in '94, there was the Duke of Boer annual meeting here in this hall. And some of us were involved in protecting the Granby. And John said, so, hey, there's the AGM at the USCC. How would you like to go and talk there on the weekend? And I know how it works. Everything's organized. There's a schedule, and you follow the schedule. I said, John, we're not on the schedule. I said, well, we'll fix that, right? And so this is all on the same day. You know, we talked in the morning, and in that same day, we're on the schedule, and not only that, there was actually a motion passed for total support for the Granby by the USCC AGM. And there were loggers, you know, I mean, we're all people who work for a living. There were loggers in the hall who weren't agreeing and blah, blah, blah. But nevertheless, it came through. And John, you know, he just had this capacity to plug people in. And I know in that John introduced a lot of people to this community. And for those of us who have gone through the door, you know, it's kind of, you come to something like this, and then you hear the songs, you feel the love, and you see John and the Troika in the sky, right? And this is really what this guy was about. It's like this, he really understood the event of life, you know, in terms of, it's just a passing thing in the wind, and we're part of his conscience, and we've got to live it. And so I'd like to thank the Semenoff family. You guys have just been great for all these years. And blessings to you.
Dad, he really enjoyed talking with people. And I think he saw it as an opportunity to have mutual empowerment. And we would go places, we'd see him talking with young people and people smiling and all kinds. And anyone, he would talk with anyone. When I talked with him, I found he would share his views, but he would be fine with us asking questions and having our own understanding, and we would grow together. There were some things he told us about, you might have already heard, but we found them very interesting. One of them was when he went to carpentry school, you know, he made new friends, but later on, years later, life went on, people went in different directions, and Dad was noticing things about awareness regarding health and smoking and things. And he saw one of his chums from school who was now, I believe, in government, and he was talking to him about how workers, they can't get away if there's smoke in the environment, right? Where you're working, you're kind of cornered, you need to work, but if there's smoke there, then it's a health hazard. So he had talked with his friend about, you know, that smoking is a workplace hazard. And so he grabbed his opportunities for sharing there, and I have found BC to be a place that I have come to for cleaner air after my travels. Another story that he told us about was during the time of Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and there were challenges between Quebec and the rest of Canada, and Quebecois people were wanting to maintain their culture and their language, and it was a challenge. People didn't know how to resolve this to make things work with the rest of Canada. And Pierre Elliott Trudeau was involved in organizing a youth conference, and Dad happened to be there, and he told us how he was in the foyer, and there were two young gentlemen from Quebec, and they were feeling concerned because they weren't getting the level of support from the others that they were really wanting. And he had a conversation with them that he told us that he was saying, well, if we piggyback, like valuing all cultures, okay, we will get support. And he's made it clear that he talked we with those gentlemen. And he told us that the phrase out of that conference came out to be then cultural pluralism. And then I find a lot of gratitude in the multiculturalism we have now. And Dad has been involved in multicultural activities. Another story that was mentioned by Vera had to do with the manifestation. Thank you for telling us about the word and the meaning of that. Dad described that he had conversations with the officials, and as I recall, he talked how there was a mutual wish for peace. And they also talked about I think they both knew they had valued the expression, the freedom of expression we have here in Canada, right? And so they were talking about needs. The officials there had a need for safety. I believe they had power lines. They didn't want any tall buses causing any trouble, so they were discussing about needs. Anyways, the officials there ended up preparing the land, and they were working at the base, right? And they were helping the people who were coming to do the manifestation. They were working together, even though they maybe saw it differently as to how to get to peace. But they facilitated the manifestation. As I recall, they were even asked to speak at it if they wanted to, at the event. So, and Dad felt really good about that, and that you know, they connected as humans, valuing each other and treating each other with respect, supporting each other, even as they had some differences, right? Yeah, so yeah, basically I saw Dad as someone who grabbed opportunities to contribute wherever he could, and I'm ever so grateful for all the family with Dad. Is a song our family has sung since we've been young, and it's a song about how wonderful things are when we're getting along and working together. It's called Družna Bratce, and our family would like to sing it.
Wait, just ran out.
Les Johnson kindly gave us some equipment to help us do that. It's very kind of him. For funeral celebration of life is asking for forgiveness. We're all human, and part part of being human is imperfectly perfect or perfectly imperfect. And while we're trying to meet our needs, and even others, sometimes some needs are not being met, and people's hearts feel hurt sometimes. So on behalf of Dad, we are asking forgiveness if anyone has had any ouch in their heart at any time in interactions. And on behalf of Dad, we also offer forgiveness if anyone felt that they wanted forgiveness also for anything they felt might have caused some pain. And also, may we all forgive ourselves and each other and practice that. Forgive us all. So there's something Dad said recently. He would say, he would ask, so we've shared about Dad and how he valued and things he valued. He did his sharing, and we all continue on now here on Earth. And he would say, would you take care of the rest of the day? So he is going to be with the angels, and he's asking us to take care of the rest of the day, so that's what we're going to do. Love to you all, gratitude to the Samapesi for all your support and everyone. Yeah, thank you for all the cousins who have come up. Thank you to everyone who's come. And it is our wish that the Samapesi, they can pick the next number that they feel. Thank you, Uncle George and Aunt Irene, for all your support as Dad was passing and afterwards, especially that day. We were facing things. Thank you so much. Love to everyone.
Dear brother, pardon I have a bit of laryngitis, but concerning the family, the brothers and sisters, I'd like to thank the Semenoff family and the children for taking such an active part in saying goodbye to their dad. We all appreciate that very much. On behalf of our Dukabor organization, we all miss John. People mention about his involvement with carpentry, but he was also a true bridge builder in terms of being open to all different cultures, and at the same time cherishing his own Dukabor culture and understanding of Dukabor spirituality, and I think that's very well reflected in the way that he's brought up his children. One other thing I'd like to mention, just from my personal experiences with your dad and our family's experiences. At one time, I remember him coming up to our place, and my parents were fine. Okay, thanks. And your dad just kind of showed up out of the blue, and he had this paper bag with him, had a bunch of different plants and herbs, and we spent about an hour him explaining each different herb, plant, describing it, its use, and it was so spontaneous and interesting that it still stays with me. Another time when he was on gardening at our residence, I remember my mom telling me a story about the discussion she had with him. She was speaking with him when the coyotes were howling on the hillside, and he told her, listen, I'll make them stop. And she told me, sure enough, he made them stop. We'll keep your dad in our hearts. And thanks again for loving your dad so much.
Вот пробел будем петь, когда выносим. Расскажу я всем живущим. I shall tell you all the story of Christ's suffering.
Всем живущим всем